Purim in Israel. Merrymaking on the march. A time of fun and games, masks and masquerades. Purim, the feast of Esther, a queen whose beauty beat the tyrant Haman and brought freedom to her people. They had come from many lands, these people who watched the Festival of Freedom, from many different ways of life. Those strangers, they all have one thing in common. They all have traveled that rugged but fascinating path from immigrant to citizen of Israel. This is Sadia. For him, Purim has a special meaning. Was not Esther the queen of Persia, the country he came from 6 years ago? Oh yes, that day is clear in his memory. Sadia the peddler and his family, to have come to the land of his forefathers, to Eretz, to Jerusalem, almost overnight. But this was not Jerusalem, and Eretz was not exactly a land flowing with milk and honey. From the very beginning, the place had the feel, the smell of hard work. No one had promised miracles, but there's no denying it. Sadia's heart was as heavy as the stones in the field. True, he had kissed the earth when he first landed in Eretz, but this soil didn't seem so lovable now. The whole way of life seemed new and strange, except the prayers. They never changed. And it was good to pray in the early morning air. It was good to pray in Eretz Israel. But even in Eretz, prayer is not everything. The new arrivals had to be ready for work. But is Sadia ready? All these rocks. Will this job ever be finished? Everybody has their own tyrants. The Jews of Persia had Haman, and Sadia has now these stones, a sea of stones to clear away, to make this hard, stubborn soil fit for farming. Gradually, the work seemed to become more promising as the soil underneath the rocks began to emerge. A few days every week, the Jewish agency sent in some of its precious machines and skilled laborers to do the job the men couldn't handle. It was a pleasure to see these monsters devour the rocks and boulders. Sadia learned quickly that there was more to farming than just clearing rocks. There were other more important jobs to learn. Yet for some people it was too hard to build a life in this rocky place. And they left, perhaps to look for an easier path. Farm, more than any place else, a woman's work is never done, especially when she's an immigrant learning a new way of life. While their parents worked, the children were helped to play and grow with loving care. Soon the stone clearing of a few months ago had become a dim memory. Sadia began to feel the earth grow under his hands. Israel was a place of dreams, but dreams that only work could make come true. The earth was no longer a strange enemy. It was now a welcoming friend, ready to give of its bounty. Sadia the peddler had become Sadia the farmer. But even more important, Sadia was a citizen of Israel who could celebrate the Purim holiday with his own people in his own land. sounds, the echoes, have a particular meaning for Joseph, because ever since he came from Poland 5 months ago, he has been pursuing a new language. In Poland, Joseph had been a government official, a skilled administrator. Now only one barrier stood between him and a good job in Israel: language. For Joseph and other professionals, the answer was a Jewish agency, Ulpan, an accelerated intensive course of Hebrew study. A boarding school where you live the language every day. For 6 months, the sound of Hebrew is everywhere, morning, noon, and night, until it is absorbed by the whole person at everything he does, including a few brief hours of relaxation. Because of the Ulpan, the students live, work, learn, and play Hebrew. But sometimes a simple word like mishkafim can make a lot of trouble. Mishkafim. Not that. Mishkafim. That's it, mishkafim. She'd better do her homework. Occasionally, exceptions are made from the harsh taskmaster of learning Hebrew. Joseph and his fellow students still read the newspapers in their native tongue. Learning Hebrew means more than classrooms, grammar, small talk. Hebrew is a culture, a tradition. Excursions are made to points of historic interest, to places like Caesarea, the ancient port of King Herod's time. A language comes alive when it leaves the dry textbooks and takes the shape of names, places, sights. For Joseph, as for the other students, Hebrew links history and the present. Hebrew becomes the bridge to his new country, the way to learning its secrets, its wonders, and its people. To Joseph, the traditions of Israel, the sounds of Hebrew are no longer strange. He is quickly learning to understand his new country at work and at play. Everybody knows that life is not just celebrations. It lies more in the overcoming of obstacles, the spanning of barriers. Shlomo and his wife Ruth learned this since they came to Israel from Romania 10 years ago. There were times in the beginning when the days never seemed to end in the bleak transition camp. But transition to what? Tens of thousands had come. Jobs, homes were scarce. Not to have a job when you want to work. You feel useless, depressed. A woman seems to manage a little better. There are always the little household jobs, even if your household is only a hut. At times there was work. Not exactly the kind of work that Shlomo, a skilled mechanic, liked, but it was work, and it built houses. It was somewhat better to work in the port of Haifa with the huge arms of the freighters reaching out for their cargo, with the smell of oranges as they were shipped to distant places. Haifa itself is a barometer of Israel's growth. As the influx of newcomers grew, swelling at times to a tide, the city expanded to receive them. Shlomo and his wife were part of this tide. To them, Haifa was an ever-changing, ever-hectic city, bustling with promise. Each street, each avenue, a new adventure. But if you're not working, like Shlomo, there's a feeling of detachment. Detachment and envy of those who are already contributing to the busy life stream of the city. The life stream of Israel swelled and grew. New factories sprang up to meet the needs of newcomers. Production became the order of the day. As Israel grew, its workforce grew, and Shlomo joined the growing ranks of productive workers who were building Israel in the fields and factories. After months of unemployment and part-time work, there's no more beautiful feeling than the heft of familiar tools. Gradually, the transition camps, those bleak scars, began to fade into history. Israel was becoming a place of homes, not tents and shacks. And immigrants by the thousands, like Shlomo and his wife, began finally to taste the promise of Israel. Today, the early hardships are forgotten, and a Purim parade can be thoroughly enjoyed. Everybody loves a parade, even an old soldier like Mazal on her first leave. But still, she's looking forward to returning to her family. Well, they're not really her family, nor are these her children. But in Kibbutz Shuval, her home, she feels as if they are. Ever since the first day she came to Israel from Morocco 7 years ago, from the cramped and twisted streets of a ghetto, Mazal knew what she wanted to do, to live and work on a farm. To be near the things that grow from the earth, to learn all about farming that there is to know. While at agricultural school, she visited Kibbutz Shuval, a growing oasis in the northern Negev desert, and she knew this was the place she wanted so much to become part of, this place where people shared their life's work, like members of a huge family. Whatever the job that had to be done, the system was scientifically and fairly managed. The heavy and light work shared by all, as it should be in a kibbutz, with nobody profiting from other people's labor, and the whole family, the kibbutz, sharing in what is grown and earned. The settlers had worked hard to push back the old dry desert, which in a few years has been taking quite a beating. The people of Shuval know they've got the desert on the run. They know it as they come from the fields every day. As they rest and relax in the evening, or romp and play in their prized possession, which seems to say, who would ever believe there would be a swimming pool in this Negev desert, where once there was hardly enough water to keep a plant alive? But one thing remained the same. Though it's peaceful now, the Shuval family must still keep its guard up, as it did from the first day, as the people of Israel must continue to be vigilant. So that even young girls like Mazal and her friend cannot forget that they must serve in the armed forces, despite the gaiety of the Purim festival. Youngsters of all ages join in, for who can resist the music and the fun? But to some people, the parade is just a distant babble of sound and color. Miriam and David are on their honeymoon. Once upon a time, as all good love stories should begin, there was a vast swampland in northern Israel called the Hule. After much travail, the Hule was drained of its marshes and malaria, and it became a fit place to live and work. Overlooking this plain, where once only mosquitoes could multiply, a new city has been born, a city called Kiryat Shmone. To this city came people from distant places, young and old, of all kinds and customs, people looking only for a place to live, to bring up their children, to work, to find themselves and each other. And to this city came Miriam, a kindergarten teacher. She came a long way, from Germany to Brazil to Israel, looking for a new way of life. And what of David? He came to Kiryat Shmone from Mexico, an engineer with a fever to build, with a passion to make a city take shape under his hands. Here in Kiryat Shmone, David and engineers like him carved out a town, a place for newcomers to call home. David and Miriam had seen each other a few days ago, talked briefly, haltingly, made a date, and they met again. These were the happy days of getting to know each other, to know themselves, to see the people around them. Kiryat Shmona grew before their eyes. Here, once again, the dramatic story of Israel was unfolding. Here were the diverse ingredients. Newcomers, strangers from many lands, a babel of many tongues, working together with a common purpose, fighting often against difficult odds. Like so many towns throughout Israel, Kiryat Shmona held the promise of a new day in the lives of so many thousands of people. This then was their town, and this town was a mirror of their country, reflecting the unyielding hope of a nation. What more is there really to celebrate than the love of two people for each other? And what then is the story of Purim, but the love of a king and a queen, and how it won freedom for a people? The people of Israel know that tyrants may come and go, but freedom can be won, a freedom which should be cherished every day.